आजादी का ये महापर्व 140 करोड़ संकल्पों का पर्व है। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के वीर जाबाजों को सैल्यूट करने का अवसर मिला है। अब भारत ने तय कर लिया है कि न्यूक्लियर की धमकियों को अब हम सहने वाले नहीं।
Well, hello and welcome to our special Independence Day broadcast. A very happy Independence Day to all of our viewers. I'm Ashmit Kumar, and joining me from our Mumbai studio is Archana Solanki. Archana, a very happy Independence Day to you as well as to our entire Mumbai team there.
Thank you, Ashmit, and a very happy Independence to you too, and to all our viewers who are watching us from across the country and across the world.
Well, we've just seen the Prime Minister speak from the ramparts of the Red Fort, and it was not short on messaging. Some big announcements coming in. One of the biggest takeaways, of course, being GST. We'll come to that. But the theme of this year's Independence Day address revolved around Naya Bharat and Operation Sindoor. The Prime Minister hailed Operation Sindoor for setting a new standard in the fight against terrorism and added that terrorism cannot coexist with talks or trade. Prime Minister Modi also made a big announcement promising a huge gift during Diwali, where the government is all set to usher in GST reform to reduce the tax burden. Let's listen in.
पिछले 8 साल से हमने जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया। पूरे देश में टैक्स के बर्डन को कम किया, टैक्स की व्यवस्थाओं को सरल किया और 8 साल के बाद समय की मांग है कि हम एक बार उसको रिव्यू करें। हमने एक हाई पावर कमेटी को बिठा करके रिव्यू शुरू किया, राज्यों से भी विचार विमर्श किया और मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, हम नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स लेकर के आ रहे हैं। ये दिवाली के अंदर आपके लिए तोहफा बन जाएंगे। सामान्य मानवीय की जरूरतों के टैक्स भारी मात्रा में कम कर दिए जाएंगे।
All right, that's the big headline coming in. Let's welcome the guests on our show. KC Singh, former ambassador, and Nilesh Shah, managing director at Kotak Mahindra AMC. First, I'd like to start with Mr. Shah. Big headline coming in on GST and the taxation on people will reduce in the coming time. The first reaction from you.
So this was expected because there were talks about GST rate reduction. And as Honorable Prime Minister mentioned, we have completed 8 years of GST reforms. Now it is time to relook and rationalize. We did launch GST with number of slabs. If that can be rationalized to fewer slabs, it will help us in improving ease of doing business. More importantly, apart from this, the message in this Independence Day speech was about Samruddh Bharat, about a Bharat which becomes Viksit. And that is possible, one, through vocal for local. Swadeshi gave us independence. Swadeshi or vocal for local should give us Samruddh Bharat. And the second most important thing is ease of doing business. We have reduced many compliance burden on our entrepreneurs, but there is still a long distance to cover.
Mr. Shah, hi, Ashmit here from the Delhi studio. Let me come back and bring the focus back to the big GST announcement. This is something which, again, is a standout feature of his speech. All of us had been watching. There was much anticipation when the GST Council will meet next, will give us direction. Give us a sense, how critical is this? Will we finally see the 12-18% slabs merge? And if yes, what was the likely impact? We heard the Prime Minister say that the GST and the tax burden, a lot of essentials will be coming down. What impact are you estimating of this rate rationalization exercise?
So, Tom, to some extent, we are right now talking with US on the tariff side. If on 27th of August, 50% tariff is levied on Indian exports, that will obviously mean an embargo on many Indian products like textiles, auto components, aquaculture, chemicals, and so on and so forth. At 50% tariff, they won't be able to export to America. Now, we have small exports to America. It could have impact on our GDP. And we can stimulate domestic economy to ensure that that impact is minimized.
Right.
The GST rate reduction will put money in the pockets of consumers.
Yeah, I just want to follow that up, Mr. Shah, that when we're talking about GST rate rationalization, when you hear the Prime Minister talk from the ramparts of Red Fort, talking about lowering the tax burden, what does that do to the fiscal math? We're looking at India being on a strong footing. Just yesterday, we got a thumbs up from S&P, but they had been stressing on smart decision-making with respect to how we're spending our money, how we're bringing in the revenue. What does this rate rationalization do to the fiscal math towards the end of the fiscal?
So one, if this rate rationalization comes, it will be effective for 3 or 4 months of this fiscal. And we can easily bridge that by way of, one, the current momentum in taxation or asset monetization stroke divestment. The markets are buoyant. Government is sitting on lots of unrealized gains on investment. They can easily book profit on those investments and yet maintain the path of fiscal consolidation.
Wonderful. Mr. Pratik Jain from PwC is also with us. Mr. Jain, very happy Independence Day to you as well. Let me begin by asking, what to your mind is the biggest takeaway? We're talking about the GST announcement, the clearest indication that has come so far from the leadership that a rate rationalization exercise is on the way. Mr. Jain.
Yes, good morning. Happy Independence Day. Absolutely good news on Independence Day. We were kind of expecting that because the rate rationalization is in the works for some time. So today you have 4 slabs, right? 5, 12, 18, and 28. What we're expecting is that 12% slab might go, right? So some of the products might come down to 5%, and that is, I think, expected, right? So a lot of food products are there, items of mass consumption and so on. Maybe a few of the items might come down from 5 to 0 as well. So rate rationalization is definitely on the cards. In addition to that, I mean, when you talk about reforms, it could be legislative reforms. So you need to simplify the GST laws. There are a lot of expenses that businesses incur for which there is no input credit as of now. So maybe that's another thing which is there in the mind. And then the administrative reforms, how can you simplify the compliances and so on, particularly for the small businesses. So a lot of things are expected, but yes, to start with, we are expecting rate rationalization to come in soon.
Right. We also have KC Singh, former ambassador. Mr. Singh, a very happy Independence Day to you, and thank you for making time for us. The speech was big on reforms. The speech was big on India asserting its place, given the way the geopolitics is developing in the world right now. What, according to you, was the biggest takeaway as far as Prime Minister's speech is concerned?
Well, thank you. A glorious Independence Day to you too. I think it ties in what the earlier speakers have said, that there's a preparation for a worst case scenario out of negotiations with America. There were 2 things on the foreign policy side. Operation Sindoor, we were expecting the focus would be on it because BJP has not been able to encash it to the extent they encashed the Balakot strike. So this is going to come back. Our elections are coming up, etc., etc. So Sindoor was going to be there. He began with it. He came back to it. The other thing was America. Now that's the bear in the room, and he didn't mention that. But the focus on self-dependence, focus on protecting the farmers, saying I'm the wall, protecting the farmers and the dairy farmers. I think it's a signal to America that we are not going to compromise on agriculture because that goes down to the village level in India, and it has gross political implications. And therefore, this reduction of GST is indirectly linked to that, because you'll have to find other markets for our exporters, whatever they lose, and you'll have to stimulate the economy for whatever little impact the US exports, loss of US exports brings. And I think the 2 tie in. And that's where it was. So essentially, whether energy, technology, defense, they're talking of self-dependence. We haven't done as well as we should have done. After all, the government has been there for 11 years. After 11 years, you can't be starting new programs and saying self-dependence, deep sea fishing for energy, and in addition, also for rare earths. That is understandable because rare earths have come into play in more recent times after Trump has disrupted global trade. So it's a speech which is dealing with the threat from Pakistan because the army chief keeps repeating the threat, even a nuclear threat, which he reiterated from the US soil. And the Americans are pampering them. They haven't criticized them. They are not controlling them. You see them pampering them for whatever reason. So that is one. So PM sort of drew the red line there and said, we stand with it. And the other one is the meeting tonight between President Putin and President Trump. If that doesn't go well in Alaska, and if the threat, which has again come from the US Treasury Department, that we will get even more vicious in attacking countries which are importing Russian oil, then we are looking at a trade standoff with the US. And therefore, this was a critical speech to see whether PM is holding on to the stand and secondly, preparing India for it.
Right. Mr. KC Singh, Ashmit here from the Delhi studio. Allow me to come in again. You mentioned that the elephant in the room, the United States, Donald Trump, was missing, was conspicuous by his absence. Also absent were any references made to, say, Putin, to Russia, to China. And I ask you this in context of the references that the Prime Minister had made with respect to energy dependence, requiring Atmanirbharta on energy. Again, no reference there to Russia. We spoke of critical minerals as well. We know that the Prime Minister will be traveling to Beijing, will be traveling to China shortly. No mention of China there as well. What do you make of this Prime Minister's speech with respect to the changing dynamics that India has with the BRICS nations?
I think Prime Minister kept away from foreign policy other than addressing Pakistan. He didn't take the credit for free trade agreement with UK. He didn't talk about free trade agreements with the other countries or that we are very close to negotiating something with Europe, because that would then take you to America straight away. I think on the eve of the Alaska meeting, he wanted to keep America out of the debate or China out of the debate. So that's why there's very little foreign policy. Normally, he used to spend quite a bit of time on foreign policy. Both the claimed credit for whatever India has achieved or the threats, there was no mention. I think he stayed clear of it. Indirectly, America was addressed by saying, I am the wall that will protect the Indian farmers. Now, that's a signal to America that we're not going to compromise on that. Other than that, he kept away from foreign policy.
Right. Mr. Shah, let's get you in on the conversation on some of the other aspects that the Prime Minister had been referring to. And I just want to, he made a reference to the ratings agency upgrade as well. We saw S&P with the ratings upgrade just yesterday. In that context, the other big announcement that the Prime Minister made with respect to the Rozgar Yojana, 1 lakh crore rupees being operationalized as of today. How important is that in terms of taking this reform journey forward?
So monetary incentives are like band-aids. They work for a while, but they don't treat the root cause. The two announcements in the Independence Day speech, I think, are treating root cause. One, ease of doing business. Undoubtedly, Jan Vishwas 1 bill has removed many compliances, as Honorable Prime Minister mentioned in the speech, but there is a long distance to cover. If we can free our entrepreneur from unnecessary compliance burden, that will create far more employment than monetary incentive. The second is independence or self-independence in critical technology. Prime Minister kept on harping upon vocal for local. We run the second largest trade deficit in the world, $250 billion plus on the goods side. We send 1.3 million students abroad for study. We send 2.6 crore Indians abroad for traveling. These are very large numbers. If we can replace those expenses, those goods with local spending, undoubtedly our economy will benefit. More employment will be created by vocal for local and ease of doing business and gaining self-independence in critical technologies, then the monetary incentive. Monetary incentive is a band-aid. These are the treatment for the root cause.
Right. Mr. Shah, please stay on with us. I'm joined by Timsy Jaipuria, who's been extensively covering the GST story for CNBC TV18. Timsy, happy Independence Day to you. The big headline coming in from Prime Minister Modi's speech, come Diwali, and there will be a blockbuster announcement as far as GST relaxations are concerned. For the benefit of our viewers, could you help us understand what kind of relief can one expect?
Well, very happy Independence Day. And yes, let me begin by first breaking a news, which I'm just getting right now as I was online. Firstly, what we are given to understand from sources that a big power-packed GST Council meeting, which has been pending since December, could happen in September. And this could be even not just one, even two GST Council meetings could be on their way in September alone, which could be, again, not just a one-day meeting. It could be two-day meetings planned for September. That's what sources are indicating, so that the Prime Minister's promise of big GST reforms by Diwali to pave way for that. The Council, remember, is the key place where these reforms will be first initiated and passed. Only then they will become reality. So there could be not just one, two-day GST Council's meeting. That is on the agenda right now. That is why the Council was holding on, because now PM feels that the country is ready for big GST reforms. Next, what could be these reforms? Firstly, as we have been reporting, the 12% slab, the rationalization of slabs coming down from 4-slab structure to 3-slab structure, that is on the agenda. Secondly, what could be the second big reforms that the PM is talking about? Could be the overall rate rationalization, because the rates that were fixed in 2017. These were as per the reality and the economic situation in 2017. A lot of very essential items, government feels that they now need to be reduced in terms of GST rates. So overall packaging of rates in terms of items, that could be done under the reform agenda. Third, the much awaited reform that we need, that all states have been demanding, stakeholders have been demanding, is on rationalization of GST rates for health and life insurance. Again, that is a big boost, a big benefit that the government has been wanting to give to people, and that again needs an overhauling. That is something that is likely to be on the agenda. That's what sources say. And last, to give relief to the industry. Industry has been calling on easing out of blocked credits, that is blocked ITC credits. That is something, a rationalization of reforms on that. Also, the pending issues in terms of easing the compliance towards the issues for the industry related to clarifications. A lot of matters are stuck. A lot of litigation is happening because of lack of clarity on law on a particular item, whether what should be the exact rate? Should it be 12%? Should it be 18%? Should it be 28%? So a lot of clarification issues are pending, and classification issues, that is also going to be on the agenda of these reforms. Let's see what happens when the council meets. But yes, as of now, sources indicating there could be not just one, two GST council meetings, power-packed meetings before Diwali, to call this a big GST council or a big GST relief for the country, big GST reforms. And yes, what could be these reforms? Slab reduction, rate rationalization, easing out the classification issues, rationalization of rates on life and health insurance, and yes, rationalization of law towards easing out blocked ITC credits, which is a big ask from the industry. Let's see what happens finally.
Right, Timsy, thank you so much for giving us that latest update, that expect not one but two GST Council meetings in the month of September. An important step forward. The Prime Minister saying a Diwali dhamaka is on the way as far as Indians are concerned. Mr. Jain, coming back to you on the subject, I just want to get your sense, your estimate on what this will do to the revenue math as far as North Block is concerned. Bear in mind, they're working with a 4.9% target for fiscal deficit. What do you think this exercise will do to that fiscal math?
Look, I think there should not be a very material impact of this on the fiscal maths, because most of the taxes which are collected today on GST come under 18% slab. So if they don't touch that, then 12% slab, this is some other items go to 5%, some probably go to 18. The overall impact should not be much. How it impacts the consumer is that if the rate is down, let's say on insurance product that Tim C spoke about, let's say on telecom or food products and so on, the consumption increases, right? So very often you see that indirect taxes are actually go up when the rates come down. So at this point in time, I think what the government wants is to increase the consumption, right? And therefore, if they bring down the rates on some of the products and simplify the tax structure, also we'll need to see what happens to the compensation cess, because the cess is going to go away from March 26, and there are a few items like aerated beverages and coal and things like that, which are subject to cess. So are they removing that cess? I mean, we have basically requested the government to look at removing the cess or merging the cess with the GST and not introduce another cess, right, in place of that. So that's something which we need to see. So, I mean, I don't think there'll be a very material impact. If at all, it will increase the consumption and hopefully the GST collection will go up.
Right, so the increase in consumption likely to compensate for any shortfall in revenue. Mr. Saurabh Agarwal is also joining us from EY. Mr. Saurabh Agarwal, a very happy Independence Day to you. Again, a big takeaway here as far as GST rate rationalization is concerned. Timsy, my colleague, confirming that in September expect 2 GST Council meetings, big reforms coming GST way. Your sense, what to your mind is top of the list as far as the reform exercise is concerned for GST? And are we anywhere closer to seeing petroleum, alcohol also coming into the GST fabric? I think we've just lost Mr. Saurabh Agarwal. We'll try and get back him online. Mr. Jain, same question to you. For having more meaningful reform above and beyond the rate rationalization, how far away are we from even talking about perhaps bringing petroleum alcohol back into the GST fold?
Look, I think we are a little away. I mean, alcohol is unlikely to come because, of course, there's a constitutional issue there. But on the petroleum products, while the government can do it, I don't see passenger fuels like petrol, diesel coming in soon. Perhaps to start with, the government might look at bringing natural gas and ATF under GST. But that also is going to take time because, you need to build that consensus among states and so on. But that, I think, over the next 1 year or so, is likely. Other petroleum products, like as I said, passenger fuel, I think it's going to take some time because there's a lot of mathematics involved there, and bringing all the states on board on that will not be easy. So I think natural gas and ATF to start with is a possibility.
Right, Mr. Jain, thanks so much for that. Let me also get our new panelists and welcome them to this special Independence Day broadcast. Mr. Subhash Garg as well as Mr. Kaushik Das. Gentlemen, very happy Independence Day to you. Happy Independence Day. We've just heard the Prime Minister from the Red Fort. Mr. Garg, let me come to you. This, my colleagues are just telling me, has been one of the longest Independence Day speeches, 103 minutes from the Prime Minister. He's covered a lot of aspects. One core messaging that he's done, one message that he's sending out is Atmanirbharta. Mr. Garg, your quick take on that. He's talked about a lot of key industries, whether that's defense, talking about manufacturing, talking about energy, and stressing on the need for self-reliance. What does this inward-looking approach suggest to you going forward as far as the reform exercise is concerned?
So I don't think this is a new thing. Prime Minister has been saying and laying emphasis on the Atmanirbharta or self-reliance for quite some time. It was more, I think, in the context of what is happening on the tariff deal with America. I think the context was that the policy of self-reliance or Atmanirbharta actually doesn't take you very far. If we are sort of thinking that the exports contribution which come to the GDP and to the prosperity of the nation can be substituted or made good by sort of selling the goods in the domestic market. I don't think that carries us very far. Export increases our GDP, which increases our income, and that income leads to consumption. So if the exports don't sort of increase or we lose it, then actually the prosperity or the income of the country goes down. So I don't think there was anything new in terms of strategy. There was a lot of talk about Swadeshi, Atmanirbharta, Samriddhi, Samriddh Bharat, now Viksit Bharat to Samriddh Bharat. If I may, I saw it more as economic jingoism rather than a hard thought out policy for reforming India's industry and the businesses.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Garg, for weighing in. I also have Kaushik Das, Chief Economist at Joyce Bank. Mr. Das, wish you a very happy Independence Day. I think another big headline that happened over the course of this week was the credit upgrade as far as India's sovereign ratings are concerned. On this Independence Day, how confident a country India has emerged as far as the geopolitics is concerned and as far as this ratings upgrade is concerned? Because remember, the sentiment matters, perception matters. Just a few weeks ago, Mr. Donald Trump has said India has called Indian economy dead. In that context, how do you see the ratings agencies upgrading India?
Good morning and happy Independence Day to you, your viewers and the fellow panelists. So this ratings upgrade is not very surprising to us. Last year, we wrote a report that India should deserve a ratings upgrade very soon. And our logic was that India should be actually 2 notches higher than where it was, not just 1 notch upgrade. So this is not something which is very surprising. And this has come after 18 years. So you could argue that this was long overdue. And India should be actually even higher rated compared to what we have achieved before the Independence Day. So the reasons that have been given by the rating agency for giving the upgrade after so long is that they have confidence now in India, maintaining a very strong growth rate. A little bit of, downside risk could come because of this tariff negotiations and all this that is happening. But over a longer period of time, if you take a view, 6 to 6.5% real GDP growth is kind of, given. And if you add another 4% inflation on top of that, India is going to grow at 10-11% nominal GDP, kind of a number for the foreseeable future. Whereas a country like China probably will grow 4 to 5% in nominal terms. So for the next 20-25 years, India would continue to grow at a very high rate. And you've seen on the fiscal side, and Mr. Garg can also talk about it, that we have seen steady fiscal consolidation. We have come down to 4.4% of GDP for the settled government fiscal deficit, which if you had asked a lot of people 5 years back, did they have confidence in this kind of steady consolidation, they probably would have said no. And we have achieved that number, and we are in a very comfortable position on the fiscal deficit at this stage compared to many other countries who are struggling with their debt. And the other things that you look at, inflation targeting, which RBI has done since 2016, we have managed to keep inflation low, except for the COVID period, which happened to all countries. Forex reserves, which the Prime Minister talked about, we have a very healthy buffer, and RBI is in a very comfortable position. So all these things, was kind of signaling that India should have got a ratings upgrade much sooner. So it's a good thing that it came before the Independence Day, and all the other measures which Prime Minister is talking about, it's a question of time when you have it. The rationalization of GST, that will bring down rates and also increase the disposable income of households, which will then add to the GDP growth, because India's private consumption is almost close to 60% of GDP. So I think we're in a good stage, and after this negotiation gets done, the tariff rates that have been announced currently will go down, and I think India will look like much stronger compared to the other countries for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. Mr. Das, thank you for weighing in. Please stay on with us. Let me also introduce two more special guests on the broadcast, Saurabh Agarwal, EY India, and Abhishek Rastogi Chambers. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us and making time. I wish you a very happy Independence Day. Let's discuss the big headline that Prime Minister Modi gave during his Independence Day speech, the big GST headline. What is your reaction? I'd like to start with Mr. Agarwal first.
So, if I look at it from a global trade tensions perspective, it is likely that our GDP will show a dip of around 0.3 to 0.5%. I think these are reformative measures which the Indian government is taking in order to ensure that in a mid to long run, we are protecting our GDP growth. At the same time, when we look at, MSMEs are the most affected due to the tariffs. And I think the compliances which are there under the GST regime as far as MSMEs are concerned, I think those require a bit of simplification. I foresee that when the Prime Minister is making such a big statement, likely there will be some relief for the MSMEs as well. I think rate rationalization is another thing which we are talking about. Looking at the increase in the per capita income of the Indian people. It is a requirement of the hour today to reduce the rates in some of the essential items like toothpaste, food processed items, two-wheelers, etc. And it's likely that as a part of the rate rationalization, this particular thing will be taken care of.
Mr. Rastogi, thank you once again for joining us. If I can also just bring you in as far as this GST announcement that has been made. The conversation that we are seeing is about lowering the burden as far as the common man is concerned. Which are some of these areas that you believe GST Council will be focused towards? We had Timsy joining us just moments back where she told us life insurance is something that's weighing heavily on the minds of the GST Council. Which are some of the other areas where we could see some relief coming in as far as the common man is concerned?
See, both goods and services which are taxed at 18% or which leads to classification disputes between the 5 and the 12% leads to confusion. So one would be the interpretation problem because of which classification disputes are going to the courts. And when we talk about the ease of doing business, that is not getting addressed with this multiplicity of rates. So that is one. Secondly, if you see, as what Timsy also mentioned, there are certain essential services as well, like, for instance, health and life insurance services. In fact, even telecom services, or in certain cases, general insurance services on vehicles, etc., which attract 18% tax. Now, we must understand that when we started in 2017 and now, almost the GST collection has doubled. So now the time is appropriate, to reduce the rate, rationalize the rate. And this timing is important also from the perspective that there is no anti-profiteering now. So basically, the price flow will be normal. The businesses will be able to dictate in terms of the price reduction or enhancement and would not impact the GST collection much because it will lead to enhanced consumption, because once the rate goes down, the effective price would also come down in a competitive world. So I think from that perspective, the timing of this rate rationalization or reduction is important. We've been very vocal about reduction of the rates and the rate rationalization both. But I think at some stage, the government will also have to take, and when the Honorable Prime Minister talks about the rate on Diwali, I think I'm expecting even the rate reduction from 18% to 16%. And believe me or not, that will really help the economy because that 2% decrease from the 18% would not only increase the consumption levels, but will also instill confidence, would give more purchasing power to the consumers. So I think from that perspective, that's important. Some of these goods and services which would go to a lower rate would be essential goods, of course, will get the benefit. Some of these products which are for common purposes, such as these foods and drinks items, would get the benefit of the lower rate. Some of these products are today which are taxed at 12% would certainly go to 5% when these come to mass consumption products. So I think from that perspective, it is very important that even the 18% rate must be looked into so that the rate rationalization is in actual effect right now. The other aspect which Timsy also mentioned was about the block credits. And as per the data which we have and as per the matters which we are handling, almost 50% of the taxpayers face these problems of credits. It could be in the form of block credits or cancellation of registrations, or vendor not paying and then credits being disallowed. I think this is the problem, which is the backbone of the issue which everybody is facing. And hence, I think there must be some thought around these as well. And we know that when we argued before the Supreme Court with respect to block credits, there was a very important decision from the Supreme Court. Now there is another batch where about 24 of these petitions are there again in the Supreme Court. So a lot of these petitions are going to Supreme Court with respect to block credits, eligibility of these credits. And these disputes basically not only impact the trust and confidence of the industry, but leads to state tax cascading, because the tax cost or these credit denials lead to extra tax, which is in any ways ultimately recovered from the consumers. So I think these aspects will be the core issues. Apart from this, I think the focus of the GST Council meetings would be on these procedural aspects such as registrations, which are getting cancelled retrospectively, and which leads in turn as a corollary to the trust deficit issues and the confidence deficit issue in industry. So I think those are the issues which must be addressed. These will be the issues which we believe will be addressed. And I think it will, we are looking forward for a couple of these months for measure of these announcements.
Right, gentlemen, please stay on with us. So we'll quickly slip into a short break. We'll be back with this and much more. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching a special broadcast on CNBC TV 18 that is dedicated to India's Independence Day. We have special guests on all the big headlines that we have been covering. Let me bring in Subhash Garg, former Finance Secretary. Sir, I wanted to understand from you some other aspects of what Prime Minister Modi touched in his speech. One, farmers. He asserted yet again that farmers are India's priority, come what may. I will stand like a wall if any policy that threatens their interests. For the benefit of our viewers, could you help us understand how is there a cost that India will pay for this position, given how strong, the headwinds are as far as Trump's tariff threat is concerned?
I think this is very directly intended to sort of cover the case of the tariff negotiations with Trump government. One of the major reasons why these failed in a way, India couldn't get the deal, was the agriculture. And there the Trump administration's ask was clearly that give us complete access to agriculture field and that too at zero rate of interest. Many items have been mentioned. Three came up very prominently. One was this GM soybean oil, the other one is corn, and the third one was the dairy. Here, India traditionally, for many years, it's not new, for the last 30, 40 years have had serious reservations about the Americans exporting to them. Let us take, for example, GM soybean oil. So there has been a very vocal trend in the country which says that the GM oil is not good for people, and therefore GM oil should not be imported or allowed to be sort of imported. Likewise, there is a documented apprehension that about 1% of the American cows end up eating some meal which has bones in it, which the Indian government and the negotiators consider as non-vegetarian. Corn, of course, has no such issues as such, but it is a commercial that in America is the largest big, huge producer of corn. So if corn comes to India, our maize and the corn prices might go down, which might affect the farmers. I think these are the reasons On fisheries, which Prime Minister keep on saying that he will take care of the fishermen's interest, we have basically the offensive interest. We don't import American fish or something. There, I don't understand why is that being sort of brought in time and again. That protection is not going anywhere. That would go, in fact, in case our markets are lost. So that is a very different sort of result. In case we don't have the tariff negotiations with them, our fishermen's interest would actually be adversely affected. Now, here, we have not done sort of commercial kind of assessment that what impact does the farmer have if the corn is imported into India, or for that matter, the interest on dairy and GM oil don't affect farmers to my mind at all, because we are deficient in edible oil. We import a lot of edible oil from the world, and the domestic farmers have no problem as regard the pricing which they get for the edible oil seeds. Likewise, for dairy now, I don't think there is any dairy farmer-related issues. In any case, Americans wouldn't be able to sort of much of dairy. So here, for two of these, to my mind, it appears to be more of political, emotional argument rather than any commercial argument. And corn, we have not done an exercise. I don't think large amount of corns will come. We need a lot of corn. So this, economically speaking, I think is boxing India into a position where it's not serving farmers or Indians' economic interest, but hurting the trade deal.
Sure. Right, Mr. Garg, thank you for that. Let me also get Dr. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw on. She's joining us over the phone line. Ms. Shaw, thank you so much for taking our time, for speaking to us. A very happy Independence Day to you. Let me come to you with the broad messaging that has been put out by the Prime Minister. His focus is clearly twofold. Number one, Atmanirbharta. Number two, reform and reducing compliance. Your quick take on that.
Yes, happy Independence Day to you and all the viewers. I would say that yes, as always, Prime Minister Modi makes a very strong call out to the nation for action, a unifying call of action for, a unifying call to the nation and a call for action. And basically what he's talking about is how do we get to Viksit Bharat through very advanced technologies. I think he has focused a lot on, making us, as you say, Atmanirbhar in every way, including defense. And, he's even given our response to the Iron Dome through the Sudarshan Chakra technologies. And I think basically he's also talking about, using innovation to drive down cost. That's another big message I got. And of course, he's also looking at various reforms, especially GST reforms, to bring down the cost of, essentials for the common man. I think that's what he's talking about, Dam kam, dam zyada. I think that's a very important statement. We have to work harder. We have to really focus on innovation that delivers affordability and low cost that makes us globally competitive. So he's not just talking about Atmanirbharta, but he's also talking about how do we become globally competitive is also his message for us.
Let me follow that up with the Prime Minister's message for the pharma sector. He was very clear in his messaging when he said that he wants the pharma sector to do more R&D. There needs to be more research here. There needs to be more innovation. We need to find more solutions here at affordable prices. What do you make of that message to the pharma sector?
Completely agree with the Prime Minister's statement. I think we really need to invest in research, cutting-edge research, and we have the talent and the unmet needs in our country to do that. And I think we need, and he also called for regulatory reforms across the board, not specifically for pharma, but I believe we need regulatory reforms for the pharma sector to really drive innovation and research. So I think the Prime Minister, as always, gave a very strong call to the nation for both, where he really strongly recognized the unity, the diversity, and the progress we are making. Because he talked about, the chips, he talked about AI, and he talked about research and innovation, which I think is all very important for our future.
Right. He's talked about R&D and the need for greater innovation here. What are the challenges that you, as an industry leader, faces in ensuring that there's more R&D spends in terms of taking this reform and having more homegrown solution, Atmanirbhar solutions from India? The challenges that you're facing.
So, the pharma sector has a particularly specific challenge of taking a molecule from lab to market, as we call it, because it takes a very long time. And I think we need very urgent regulatory reforms that shorten that timeline. And because the timeline is so long, investments are considered to be high risk, and therefore there is risk aversion in the minds of investors, and they don't invest in cutting edge innovation. And that is really the challenge that the pharma sector faces. And therefore, I believe that unless we have very, very bold regulatory reforms that shorten this, lab to market journey, I think we will not see the kind of research investment that is required for a country like India. We are a country that has a huge disease burden, an enormous unmet need when it comes to healthcare and disease control, and yet we keep only developing products that are developed in other parts of the world and bring it to India. We need our own innovation. We need to take research and innovation from India to the world. And that's where I think regulators play an important role. I think China has already demonstrated that, and I think India needs to do that. And we can do it because we have the talent, we have the capability, but we also need a regulatory ecosystem that enables and encourages this kind of innovation.
Just one final question, Ms. Shaw, that when you talk of, we just had that headline yesterday coming in from S&P, the ratings upgrade. The other players, the other rating agencies, Fitch, they've held their rating since 2006. There's been no change. Moody's has held its rating since 2020. Did you see any indication, any reform signals being thrown by the Prime Minister that could compel even the likes of Fitch and Moody's to give a ratings upgrade to India, which has been pending for a very long time now? Is GST that announcement for you? Is the Rozgar Yojana the announcement for you? Any triggers that you see that could change the dynamics as far as ratings agencies are concerned?
We must remember that the Independence Day speech is not a budget speech, and we must focus on what our country is, focusing on in terms of all the things that the Prime Minister said. But having said that, I think there was a very strong intent for regulatory reforms, starting with GST reforms. And I hope that this actually paves the way for others to basically focus on reforms.
Wonderful. Ms. Shaw, just stay on with us for a couple more minutes. Let me also get Mr. Das with us. He's been patiently waiting. Mr. Das, coming to you now, the same question. We saw the S&P upgrade. It hasn't quite come from Fitch and Moody's yet. Fitch holding on to its BBB negative rating since 2006. No change there. Similarly, Moody's again, since 2020, we've not seen any action. Same question to you. Did you see any triggers here? The big announcements that we've seen with respect to number one, GST, number two, the Rozgar Yojana. We've also heard a lot of conversation about ensuring ease of compliance and reform, the messaging that is being put out by the Prime Minister. Any triggers there for you, for the likes of Fitch, Moody's to act?
See, rating agencies will not react based on, what has been said in the Independence Day speech. But the point is what you said, like, over a longer period, if you consider the last 10 years, 20 years, on one hand, you're saying India has made, structural reforms. India's growth trajectory has gone to a different level. We are talking about India becoming a $7 trillion economy by 2030, even with the most conservative estimates. unless you have a situation like COVID, which happened in 2020. If it did not happen, India would have reached those kind of landmarks much before 2030. So if you take all the improvements that have happened in India in the last 10 to 20 years, by now we should have already had a higher ratings upgrade for all the rating agencies. So S&P has done it, we welcome it, but the point is that others will also follow suit. But from a market point of view, you need to keep this in mind. The real investors who look to invest in India, they're not going to wait for an ratings upgrade to decide whether they should invest or not. Those investments have already happened, seeing how India has progressed. Rating agencies are always more of a lagging indicator, and it's just a confirmation that whatever people were investing, looking at the future outlook, that has come to be true. So I'm not kind of holding my breath whether Fitch or Moody's will upgrade India or not. I think India's story remains very strong. Investors, those who are looking at India strategically over the next 20, 30 years, looking at India becoming a developed economy by 2047, like Prime Minister Modi said, I don't think they will wait for a ratings upgrade to decide whether they should invest or not. That motion is already there. And if you think of it from a broader perspective, if I give you a big thematic kind of a thought, the only country which probably has a demographic dividend for the next 20, 25 years is going to be India. If you look at the rest of the world, whether it is Japan, whether it is China, whether it is Europe, and to some extent US, you have demography, which is negative for the rest of the world. So the next 20 years will be a growth engine which will be spurred by India, not just for India, but for the global economy as well. And India's share in the global GDP growth will have to increase given where we are positioned as in our demographic cycle. So all the problems that India today has, what we discuss and what Prime Minister Modi is trying to resolve, these are supply side problems. And a lot of supply side reforms have been announced, which in my view are still relatively easier to solve compared to the rest of the world, if you see, which has a demand side problem because of negative demography. And they have tried to solve that problem at times by printing money, by quantitative easing, and you've seen inflation gone up. Even in Japan currently, and Europe and US, you've already seen, and you are back to fighting inflation over there. Relatively, India spending a lot on infrastructure, giving a lot of importance on improving the quality of fiscal spending, which is why we got the ratings upgrade. And we are, making sure that we can, get these young people who will come looking for jobs, gainfully employed in the economy, and we'll have a situation where India will grow at 6-7% for the foreseeable future. So I'm not at all bothered whether the other two agencies will upgrade or not. And I'm sure they will, but the real investors will not wait for them. And your equity markets will already, react based on what is happening and what is the future outlook, not wait for the ratings upgrade from these agencies.
Right, Mr. Das. Mr. Garg, let me come to you now. One aspect that has been talked about very in boardrooms, in civil society, in newsrooms here as well, has been GVCs. I just want to get a sense in terms of the role that you see China now playing. There's, of course, realignment that we're beginning to see. We've started issuing visas now. We'll also be initiating flights. There are conversations, a diplomatic dialogue between the two countries. There are relaxations that we're beginning to see in terms of business relations as well. Do you see that resolving issues such as critical earth, such as Chinese workers, such as supply of critical equipment? Do you see those issues being resolved, or do you see continued tension perhaps between the two neighbors?
I think it will be a very good fallout of the failure of the tariff discussions with America in case we sort out our problems with China and learn to do business with them. Unfortunately, we had for the last 5 years followed a policy of denying Chinese investment any space in India, whether it's EVs or solar side or any of the new industrial sort of economy and manufacturing. Now we have this, we have opened up some sort of dialogue, which was also partly forced by what we saw in case of this rare earth magnets kind of thing, that they can sort of create problems for us in many areas by only switching off supplies in some ways. But I would like to sort of caution that we shouldn't be going to China only to sort of take a pot shot at Americans, like jilted lover or something of that sort. We had always the case for doing business with Chinese, and we must do. We are 100 billion deficit there. It makes eminent sense if the Chinese invest here in India and put factories and investment and their money here. It makes sense for us to open up borrowings in Chinese market to pay for the Chinese import and all. So there is tremendous interest which we have in terms of doing business with them, rather than only relying on imports and paying through nose. So let us open up, let us make the business dealings, industrial relations, and economic partnership with Chinese to serve our long-term and real interest better, not as a sort of messaging that we are doing it to send a message to America.
Right. One final question to you, Mr. Garg. Very recently, we had Mr. Amitabh Kant joining us on CNBC TV 18. He said that time is ripe for reconsidering or reviewing the restrictions that we had put on investments coming in from our land neighboring countries under Press Note 3, the FDI policy. You think it's time now? Would you agree with that? It's time now to review perhaps the security clearances that we'd imposed on countries such as China while they're looking to invest in India?
It should not have been imposed in 2019. We are already 5 to 6 years late. We must do away with this. There is no economic sense. It's only the emotionalism which was the reason why such kind of restrictions happened. And therefore, we should do it. Look at solar side. We will never be able, the kind of technological improvement Chinese have been doing, whether we create module manufacture, assembly facilities here or the solar cell, but the basic technology in the material still comes from the Chinese. So why not allow them to invest? So this press note should have been junked long before. If we do it now, I think that is saner and better. Thank you.
Garg, thank you so much for taking out your time speaking to us. Mr. Das, Ms. Shaw, thank you so much for taking our time, shedding more light. Independence Day speech we heard from the Prime Minister. It was, by all benchmarks, one of the longest speeches we've heard from Independence Day. Ramparts from the Red Fort, ramparts, 103 minutes from the Prime Minister. But it was full of messaging. He sent out the message of Atmanirbharta, of reforms, while at the same time making some big ticket announcements, giving a double dhamaka on Diwali. That's on account of GST reform, the clearest indication yet from the leadership on rate rationalization coming our way. Timsy, our colleague, had joined us talking about GST Council meetings, 2 of them expected in September. We heard a Rozgar Yojana as well, 1 lakh crore rupees worth of that scheme going commissioned as of today, August 15th. And then, of course, talking about issues of manufacturing, of the need for self-reliance, the messaging on Atmanirbharta, staying firm with the Prime Minister's speech there. But that's unfortunately all the time that we have. I'd like to wish all of our panelists, all of our viewers as well, a very happy Independence Day. That's all the time that we have. It's a wrap on this special broadcast. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for more news and updates.